Well, first of all, I've been able to sit and watch most of the presentations over the course of these 2 days, and they've been terrific. So, John, AdExchanger team, great job. And thank you again for including me as one of the speakers. And when John said, hey, I want to have you close it out, I said, I don't know, is anybody going to be left? So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. As John mentioned, I'm at Luma Partners. For those of you that don't know Luma, we are an M&A advisory firm. We focus exclusively on digital media, digital marketing. And so what we do on a daily basis is we go out and we meet with the CEOs of the startups, get a feel for what is their offering, who do they sell to, how they differentiate. And then with that knowledge of all the startups, we spend a lot of time with the buyers. So these are the marketing clouds, the telcos, et cetera. And we talk about the trends that are relevant to them, what strategies they can pursue, and what targets make the most sense for them to go buy. So our views are fueled by seeing what innovations are coming up from the startups, as well as what the buyers are looking at. Everything that's been discussed over yesterday and today are included in our coverage area. So the hardest thing was actually figuring out what I wanted to talk about. So the title is Putting All the Pieces Together. It's not all the pieces. What I'm going to do is, it's a very simple agenda. For advertising, I want to talk a little high-level commentary, but then dive deep into just one takeaway for your marketers. And then for you marketers, and then MarTech, same thing. But then also touch on the M&A environment, so that's where we make our business. So on the advertising side, programmatic has obviously continued to grow at a terrific rate. We were founded 7.5 years ago when basically programmatic was zero. Now it's almost 80% of the display ad market, and half of our time is now spent on digital devices. However, there are a bunch of issues, all of these that actually have been discussed on stage in the last couple days. As far as the digital duopoly, at the end of 2016, Facebook and Google captured 60% of the market. When 2017 numbers come in, it's expected to be somewhere around 2/3, maybe even 70%. Probably the most concerning thing for the rest of the industry is that they're capturing 10% or 90% of the market, leaving only 10% for everybody else. Scott Galloway yesterday actually said they are capturing 103%, which would indicate the rest of the market is shrinking. So it's easy to map out, where most of the industry is. And 2 years ago, I talked about the rule of three, where AdExchanger did a terrific piece on most industries end up with 3 main players. And so I did this for advertising and marketing. And in advertising, it was, well, there's 2 that are very logical. It's these 2. But after that, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Yahoo or is it going to be AOL? That was really the discussion. Well, those are together, so the logical conclusion should be Oath. Well, what has been discussed by a number of parties, that kind of consensus number 3 has emerged as Amazon. And Amazon has been amazing to watch. I mean, a company that can grow over a 70% compound annual growth rate over the duration of its entire business is unbelievable. And they've obviously been disrupting a lot of different industries, including advertising. So not that long ago, the typical path to purchase on Amazon was starting a Google search for a product, and you most likely would end up on Amazon to make that purchase. The shift that's happened just in the last few years is now for product-centric searches, 55% of those searches start on Amazon. And if you can't find it on Amazon, it then goes to Google. I mean, who would have thought that Google would become a secondary search engine for a major category like product searches? What's probably even more interesting is, search is one of those where it's like, well, that's kind of logical. There's a search box on Amazon. My partner, Terry Kawaja, in 2009, actually had this presentation where he talked about, he said, when display advertising becomes more of a science rather than an art and more data-driven, and use that data for targeting, my prediction is that Amazon is going to become a major player in display advertising. In 2009, people thought he was crazy. Well, where are we today? Amazon's expected to do $5 billion in advertising in 2018. Just last week, AdExchanger did an interview with Sir Martin Sorrell, And he talked about Group M spending $180 million last year, going to $300 million this year. So we're going to see that growth rate continue to go up significantly. So that digital duopoly may become a triopoly sometime in the not too distant future. Another thing we've really been seeing, and especially in the last year, are guys like March Pritchard talking about these issues in the industry. Things like measurement, viewability, fraud. And the biggest issue that we're experiencing is this issue of trust. And actually in that prior session, EA mentioned trust has been something that has been put on the sidelines. And so what we've seen is a deterioration of trust within marketers. And what has that done? Actually, let me dive into fraud for this. So fraud is a major issue. FT talked about losing 1.3 million a month due to fraud, and they found 300 accounts that were selling inventory, purporting to be their inventory, across 10 to 15 ad exchanges. White Ops found the MethBot, or discovered MethBot, which is 6,000 premium domains were spoofed, 400 million video ad impressions per day, and 5 million of fraudulent revenue per day. These are major, major issues. And the impact of that are parties like P&G last year saying, you know what, we're going to pull $100 million of digital ad spend out of the market. This is what we can't enable to happen. This is what needs to be cleaned up. And, but don't panic, there is a fix. Diving down into kind of the actionable takeaways, there are industry solutions and technology solutions. So I'll come back to the industry solutions. On the MarTech side, the parties like DoubleVerify, IAS, Moat, and White Ops, they are terrific businesses doing great work to solve fraud, viewability, and verification from a technology perspective. And all of you as marketers should absolutely be working with these parties. On the industry side, in September of last year, the IAB Tech Lab announced ads.txt. And this is something that we actually have been co-hosting dinners with Google, getting the word out, saying this is something that should be broadly implemented across the industry. For publishers, it gives you greater control over your inventory, weed out bad actors, increase revenues. And for marketers, it really brings back trust and does help you drive revenue because you're not buying fraudulent inventory. And the impact is amazing. So Business Insider did a 15-minute test where they found 10 to 30 million fraudulent impressions every 15 minutes. And to give you a feel for context, they would do typically 10 to 25 million impressions per day on their site. And one of the advertisers that thought they were buying on BI only got $97 of a $40,000 order. So this is something that is major that needs addressing. And ads.txt, for those of you that aren't familiar, it's a simple solution. Publishers put a text file on their site that identifies their partners for monetization, the exchanges and the SSPs and the like. And so when a DSP is bidding, they can grab that file, see who the partners are, and if they see inventory that's not from one of those partners, they know it's fraudulent, they don't bid on it. So now Google with DBM, they won't buy impressions that aren't verified by ads.txt. And the rest of the DSPs have also implemented their ads.txt solutions. So the takeaway for you marketers is I would insist with your partners that you only buy inventory that is verified with ads.txt. So moving on to MarTech, I've started every presentation with these two slides with a reminder, what is every marketer's goal? Drive more revenues at the lowest cost. How are we doing this? We hear over and over, right message, right time to the right person. On the ad tech side, obviously, if it's not viewable, if it's fraudulent, you're not getting the right message, right time to the right person. We talked about how to address that. On the marketing side, last year my presentation was called Orchestrating the Future, and it talked about the three main areas that marketers need to focus on in order to do this. And it's data, identity, and orchestration. And last year, this is a graphic I used, but right now I want to talk about the data aspect of this. So marketing has always been a very channel-centric practice. And because of that, there's different teams using different systems for each channel. So you have CRM systems, DMP, commerce platforms, ESP, web analytics, call center, and more that all have their own data stores. And one of the things that I heard in multiple sessions is, you do need to have a single view of the customer. This was an eMarketer survey from last year, where only 6% of marketers surveyed said a single view of the customer was not important. Everybody else said it was important, very important, or extremely important. So I would bet those 6% are either fired or getting fired. Even though that's a recognized need, only 5% of marketers have actually implemented a solution that enables a single view of the customer. And so that really begged the question for us is, okay, well, if marketers are going to move to the single view of the customer, what is that customer record that they want to have this view over? And so, it's obviously things that are long-lived: name, address, email, purchase history, those kind of things. It's also things that can be inferred or learned over time, but they're also fairly long-lived. The device IDs, brand affinities, household income, the sizes, customer segments. And GDPR has been one of the topics as well. So the opt-in, opt-out, those kind of permissions should absolutely be part of the customer record. And then there's those that are more, or aspects that are more dynamic and short-lived. So these are the ads that they've seen and clicked, emails that they've opened, what have they browsed for, what's in their, what product have they abandoned in their cart. These are also the things that should be part of the customer record. So we believe it's all of this. So what is a system that does manage this, and who owns the customer record from a technology perspective? So we got a call early last year by a very large technology company that is not a marketing cloud that said, we're considering entering the marketing cloud area. So can you come in and talk about what is the definition of marketing cloud? What are the components? Who are the current marketing clouds, and what components do they have? And as part of that, it seems like CRM is really important as part of the equation. Can you talk about what are the B2B CRM players and what are the B2C CRM players? And so we made this slide for that meeting, and we said, well, on the B2B side, it's really obvious. It's Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics and NetSuite and Sugar CRM, those parties that are very well known as the CRM companies. On the B2C side, it's actually not defined. And so our view that we presented was we actually believe it's a customer data platform plus AI. That really is the system that should manage the customer record for B2C. And so CDPs is an area that really in the last 12 months has emerged. We added it to our marketing technology Luminscape last year. To give you a feel, I was meeting with the CEO of a CDP in August of last year. He talked about how in 2016 there were 0 RFPs for CDPs, at least that he saw. Then he got 3 in Q1, 3 in Q2, and 5 in July. And since then, it's continued to ramp. So this is a category that the market has started to recognize is really important. And for those of you that aren't really familiar, Michael Katz from mParticle did a great job talking about CDPs. The way we look at it is these are systems that collect the data from all of those disparate systems. It normalizes, unifies that data. It models that data, creates segments. Basically what they're doing is figuring out what is the next action that we should take for each individual across which channel, and then it pushes back those actions back out into the execution systems. And so if you come back to this graphic, a CDP, I would argue, actually is the data hub plus the orchestration layer. I know CDPs would argue they're the identity layer as well, and I agree they actually manage a lot of identity assets. But I think identity is a little more distributed right now. I mean, you just had an identity panel, so most people with identity solutions are working with LiveRamp. They're working with Oracle Data Cloud and others. So identity I still view as being a bit more distributed at this time. So if you look at the companies we included in the category, we broke it in half, where on the left-hand side, these are the companies that are focused on commerce. And a lot of these players have been around much longer, and they're really focused on using machine learning to figure out what product should I be showing a person next, personalized emails, web content. The companies on the right are generally newer companies or newer to the category. But what's really interesting is on this list, you have guys like General Mills and Heineken and Nestle, so classic CPG marketers. And that's really interesting to me, since those parties typically don't have that direct connection to the consumer, since they go through the retailers. But we've actually had a lot of conversations with various marketers at CPG companies. And what we're hearing is they absolutely want to have customer identity graphs, single views of the customer, establish that relationship with the customer. There's different methodologies they're using. And so they're also adopting CDPs as well. We get the question, what's the difference between a CDP and a DMP? This is where I actually differ from Michael Katz at Imparticle a little bit, where he said, the DMP is dead. CDP, as far as a primary use, CDP is for marketing, DMP is for advertising. The data managed in the CDP is PII data, name, address, email, purchase history, web browsing behavior, all that kind of stuff, plus anonymous. So if they don't know, if you don't know who the consumer is, you can still manage the anonymous profile and append all that information once they become known, if they do. On the DMP side, it's all non-PII. If they do have PII information in there, it's generally anonymized. So instead of an email, it's email hash. The primary integrations for a CDP are generally marketing-centric systems like ESPs, e-commerce, content management, A/B testing. Where on DMP, they're typically advertising systems. And the use cases for a CDP, it's that 360-degree view of the customer, email personalization, web personalization, customer analytics. Where on the DMP side, it's more audience segmentation, lookalike modeling, et cetera. So you can break it down into really CDPs enabling one-to-one marketing, DMPs enabling segment-based advertising. I know there'll be parties that argue with me from both sides, but this is my view of this. But the way we view it is it's not a CDP versus a DMP, it's an and. Because most parties are doing upper funnel advertising as well as one-to-one marketing. And we've talked to a number of marketers where this is how they're working together. They actually will ingest data from DMPs as part of the customer profile, create the segments, et cetera, then push it back out in the DMP for actioning and advertising, and maybe do lookalike modeling on the segments that are creating in CDP. So these are systems that can and do interoperate. So moving to M&A trends, we still hear sometimes people say, well, when is consolidation going to happen? And we're like, well, that's our business. It's been happening. If we look at 2013 to 27 across our display Lumiscape and marketing technology Lumiscape, about 70 companies were added to each, and over 100 were acquired across each. So you do have net consolidation across basically every area we cover. And so since our areas are ad tech, martech, digital content, we track all the deals. It's been a very steady deal environment. And the primary source of exits is M&A. And just in the last year, there were 46 deals over $100 million. So it's a very robust environment with a lot of deals that actually have good scale. And so it's interesting to look back over time, the different segments of buyers. So we were founded 7.5 years ago, and when we were founded, the guys we call Internet Originals, Google, Yahoo, AOL, Microsoft, they had done the vast majority of the acquisitions in digital. And at that time, going forward, they actually were still very active, largely assembling their programmatic assets. A lot of people thought the social networks would be big acquirers, and when Twitter and Facebook went public, they did do a few deals. They did a lot of acqui-hires. All these deals are over $50 million just to kind of take out the acqui-hire clutter. But they really haven't been that big of acquirers in ad tech and martech. Snap has just going public, is now emerging as a buyer, and we think they'll do more. The marketing clouds have been very consistent. Over the years, a couple blips, you saw only one deal in 2015 and only 2 deals last year. We continue to expect them to continue to fill out their marketing clouds because they are definitely far from complete. And then telcos, they have been very active. And one thing that's interesting, if you take the assets from the Internet originals that were Yahoo and AOL and move them down, since that's where they now belong, the vast majority of the ad tech deals in the last 5 years have been done by the telco and MVPD sectors. The other big buyer set that's been mostly in the MarTech area are private equity. They've been very active, will continue to be very active. And so, and based on all our conversations, we still hear from, startup CEOs saying, well, Google should buy me. Like, okay, well, if you're an ad tech guy, look, they're not buying, they've assembled their assets. But there are still a lot of buyers out there, ad tech buyers primarily being the telco sector, and private equity being the biggest buyers in MarTech, with the marketing clouds still doing absolutely strategic deals going forward. So the quick takeaways, already stated it, but on advertising, continue to embrace programmatic, but protect yourself. Insist on buying inventory that's verified by ads.txt and implement robust viewability, fraud protection, and third-party measurement. And the marketing side, definitely break down the silos and embrace a single customer view and consider a CDP. Those would be my recommendations to you as marketers. And that's it. And I understand it is now happy hour, so hope everybody enjoys it. Thank you.